Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to take a second to just get into why us therapists are so into feelings, because I don't think as a profession we do a very good job of explaining what their importance is to relationships and to ourselves. Before we go on, let's just get real clear on the distinctions between emotions and feelings. And don't get too hung up on this because I use them interchangeably, and I think most people do, but there is a technical difference. So as you may know by now, my dog Gogo is very useful at explaining important psychological concepts, and especially to teenagers that really feel that they get the buy-in when there's a dog talking instead of some crusty old English therapist. So he comes in very useful once in a while, and he's a 2-year-old pit bull mix. He's a rescue that I got during the pandemic. One of the first things that I noticed about him when I got him was how terrified he is of his own shadow. Like, literally, for a pit bull, he is the most scared dog I've ever seen. One of the first few weeks that I got him, I took him down a street by my office, and we came face to face with the scariest thing that he'd ever seen, and it's a barbecue in the shape of a pig. He just would not go near it. He does this whenever there's something unusual on the street, like something out of place. He just gets very scared. In psychological terms, there is a stimulus, something new that he is seeing on the street, and it causes a very physical or visceral reaction. You can see that in the way that his body language changes. The hairs on the back of his neck stand up, his ears are super pointy, and he's looking at this thing with all focus on it. That to me is an emotional reaction. It's in his body. And it's almost instinctual, right? The stimulus provides this instinctual response that's very much bodily located. Emotions are a physical state that are arising from the body's response to an external stimulus. Something similar has happened to you, most probably if you're walking down a dark alley alone at night and you hear a noise. You'll instinctually have a fear-based response. You'll get that peak in adrenaline, you'll pick up your pace, you'll tense up a little bit. Those are emotional reactions going on in your body. You can physically feel it as well as emotionally. Occasionally you'll have a fear-based response without acknowledging consciously the stimuli, and that's because your brain is filtering out a whole bunch of information before feeding it up to your awareness. So it's possible that you on some level heard a noise or saw something out of the corner of your eye that didn't register consciously, but your emotional part of your brain, the primitive part of your brain, did process it, and that's why you're getting that big response. But back to Gogo. Sometimes Gogo will look to me for assurance when he comes across something strange on the street, and I'll have to go and show him that it's not actually a monster, it's a piece of old carpet or whatever it is. That to me, and obviously I don't know this to be true 100%, is more of a feeling. Feelings have more of a cognitive awareness of what is going on in the body. To me, he's thinking about what is going on for him and looking to me to see if I'm freaking out or if I'm actually remaining calm. So emotions are more bodily based reactions to stimuli, whereas feelings have more of an understanding about what is going on in the body and hopefully some communication about what is going on as well. If you want to know more about mental health, if you want to know more about feelings, if you just want to see more pictures or videos of my dog, hit subscribe. Now we know the difference between emotions and feelings, but I still haven't answered the question about why therapists are so obsessed with knowing what you're feeling all the time.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
The easiest way for me to explain it is to talk about what goes on when you don't know what you're feeling. And once again, Gogo is going to help me out. I'm pretty confident in saying that Bear is probably Gogo's favorite toy. But there's a few others that you should know about. He likes them because he can do different things with each of them. So Tree sometimes has a treat hidden in it, and he loves sniffing inside and trying to get the treat out. Bear is a good all-round toy. He can cuddle with Bear, he can play tug with Bear, and kind of choose on it as well. Rope is the best for tug, and we play for hours. Seriously, hours. It's exhausting. And Ball is obviously good for fetch. Interesting side note, he's got very little interest in fetch or ball, and peanut butter, which is odd for dogs. Now, suppose we were to go on vacation and I threw some of these toys into my suitcase before we left. When we get to our tropical resort and shown to our suite and have sniffed everything that needs sniffing, Gogo will inevitably want to play. But he won't know what games he can play or what toys he can play with until he knows what's inside the suitcase. So feelings work in a pretty similar way, but whereas Gogo's toys have games attached to them, feelings have needs or activities attached to them. So if you're feeling lonely, the need might be to connect and the activity might be to call someone. If you're feeling insecure, you might have a need to ask for assurance, which is the activity as well. If you don't really know what you're feeling, then you don't really know what you need. And if you don't really know what you need, then how can you expect to live a fulfilled and happy life? Most people are aware of their feelings to some extent, and what I find in my clinical work is that people are most attuned to their primary feelings. These are the feelings like anxiety or anger that come up first, but actually there's a lot going on underneath the surface that most people aren't aware of. Let's imagine that your alarm didn't go off and you are very late to work. You are totally unprepared to give a very important presentation to your boss, and your boss gets increasingly agitated, yells at you, and then finally insists that you stay late to make the presentation better. Your primary feeling to this might be anger, and anger has needs and actions associated with it. So your first instinct might be to get defensive and go and yell back. However, if you are paying attention to all of your feelings and you're like Gogo and interested in all of the toys in the suitcase so that you know all of the different types of games you could play, then you'll be aware of more feelings and have more needs identified. And with each of those needs identified, you'll have more actions to choose from. So underneath your anger, you might feel some guilt. Guilt is the feeling that comes up when we know we've done something wrong. So the need or action attached to that might be to go and make amends or apologize. There might be some embarrassment because you didn't know how to use PowerPoint or create the presentation or something like that. So you might have to go and ask for help or more training. Or you might be terrified that you're going to get fired, and the need or action around that is perhaps to ask for some assurance or make sure you're not in too much trouble. So therapy and identifying your feelings and the needs attached to them is all about giving you more options in life, and who doesn't want more options? As a species, we do not like it when we don't have much choice, and we do feel happier, more content and fulfilled when we have choices in our life. Sorting through feelings and working through the needs and actions attached to them all is what therapy is really good for. We get to untangle and unpick this hot mess of feelings that we might have about a situation or an event. I get to help my clients identify more choices and giving them more freedom and a more expansive sort of take on the world. One way that we can work through and sort through complicated feelings by ourselves is through journaling. And it's the same process. We pull out individual threads of this hot mess of feelings by writing. But more generally, we do this through conversation. So this is where parenting comes back in, because the first conversations that we have are with our caregivers. Parents do this instinctually from birth. When they're holding the baby, I don't think you can help yourself but say, oh, you must be hungry, or oh, you must be cold. You're naming feelings. And as the child gets older, those feelings get more complicated. And teenage years is perhaps when we need even more help naming our feelings. And a lot of my work with adolescents is helping them identify what is going on the inside. So parents have this job of identifying their children's needs from birth all the way through until they leave home, basically. The final point that I want to make about feelings is about the consequences of unrecognized feelings. Like, what happens to us if we go through life without knowing our feelings or being able to identify or articulate them? I'm a big Brené Brown fan, and the first thing that comes to mind is her definition of shame, which is the idea that something is wrong with you as a person. And it makes a lot of sense. If you've just got this whole mess of feelings going on and you don't know what they are, you're probably going to feel that something is wrong with you. So a lot of shame-based behaviors and shame-based difficulties come from a lack of understanding of our internal emotional world. Along with that is mental health. I think shame and mental health issues go hand in hand. Murray Bowen, who's one of the founders of family systems theory, would define this tangled web of feelings that I'm depicting here as being chronic anxiety. He would consider this to be anxiety provoking. Depression is often related to anger turned inwards. So if you don't know that you're angry or don't know that you're feeling angry, I think, yeah, it's going to be quite easy to get depressed. When we can't identify all of these feelings, it's going to be much easier for someone to slip into addiction. And that could be substance use, but also process addictions like gambling or video games. These are all ways that we medicate feelings. We escape them either chemically or by engaging, behaviors so that we don't feel anything else. In general, if you don't know what you're feeling, it's going to be very hard to feel good about yourself. So I think of unrecognized or unidentified feelings as being a cause of low self-esteem, a lack of identity, not really knowing who you are. And the final, probably most important point or obvious point to me is about relationships. We feel close to someone when there's an emotional connection to them. If you can't identify your emotions or your feelings, it's going to be very hard to feel close to someone and have fulfilling relationships in your life. So I think people who can't identify their feelings are going to have some intimacy issues or feel very lonely and disconnected from others. That's my spiel on feelings. If you want to know more about feelings, mental health, therapy, relationships, hit subscribe.